Hello all, and welcome back to another episode of TV and Us, a conversation show about the TV series we just can't stop talking about. My name is Jennifer Hahn.
And I'm Sarah Callan.
Each season we focus on a different show, reviewing it episode by episode, and we invite you to watch along with us. Right now we are reviewing The Last of Us Season 1, and today we are on episode 5, titled Endure and Survive. If you haven't watched it yet, this is your spoiler alert. Please check it out before listening to the rest of this episode. Okay, Sarah, what is the episode summary for this 5th episode?
Well, attempting to evade the rebels, Joel and Ellie cross paths with the most wanted man in Kansas City. Kathleen continues her hunt.
Okay, that she does. Okay, let's dive right in. What is your episode title for this 5th episode?
Mine is Forgive.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. Great choice. Great choice. My episode title is Comic Book.
It's such a sweet little bonding moment.
All right, time to dive in. Tell me your thoughts about this 5th episode of The Last of Us Season 1. Oh my goodness. Where to begin even, you know?
Well, so in our last episode, we had kind of talked about, the episode 4 is kind of like this bridge. It's easing us in. Episode 3 is very emotional, very weighty, very tender, not what you would expect in a dystopian story. And then episode 4, our characters make some progress. It's very funny. There's a lot of emotional growth. And then there's the beginnings of some action. We understand the players. We understand the danger. And at the end of the previous episode, we were wondering, what is in store for us? What is coming next? Are we going to get some action? And I am so pleased to say that we got some action in this episode. And we get to see, not only do we get to see more of these rebels and learn more about their backstory and what Henry did and how this group is operating, we also get to see a lot of infected just going ham.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna lie, that's pretty satisfying. So all of that action that we've been waiting for, I know that I've been really waiting for, we get a good dose of that in this episode. So I was quite pleased about that.
That we do. Yeah, at the end of our last episode, we were talking about, like that episode 4 felt like an appetizer for potentially a full meal. And I think we got like a Vegas buffet in this one. Man, I'm not a very vocal watcher if I'm watching something on my own. Like I'm not like yelping and saying things out loud, but I very much was making lots of sounds and screaming lots of things in this episode. And man, the full experience I feel like we got here, it feels so fitting too, because this is kind of the center point of the entire season. And there's so much that has been leading up until this point, and a lot of backstory that we've gotten that really, I think the show paid off and satisfied us with in this episode. I'm just so impressed by the show's ability to quickly and efficiently have us fall in love with some characters and then quickly and efficiently take those characters out and just absolutely rip our hearts out of our chests. So the efficiency in which this show is able to do that, I think, is such a testament to the ability that it has to understand human nature and what will tug on all of our heartstrings, but also just how quickly, we are empathizing with Joel and Ellie as they are becoming attached to these two and then have to deal with the aftermath of it too. So I feel like I, along with Joel and Ellie, am just being hardened episode to episode of The Last of Us, because you get so invested in someone and then you have to figure out the aftermath of not having them here anymore.
Yeah, I feel so conflicted with these characters, because on the one hand, I'm like, yes, emotional growth. This is great. You're being vulnerable. You're opening yourself up. This is so good. This is emotional health. We love to see it. unfortunately, they are in The Last of Us and everyone is going to die. So it's kind of
Mm-hmm.
unfortunate. So like every time, especially after just I don't know, the infected attack. I don't know what we're calling this brawl situation.
You probably saw it
After
coming.
that, oh yeah,
Yeah.
no, 1000%. Here's my thing. Okay. If you're in a zombie situation, if you're in an infected situation, you just need to do regular checks. It's going to be part of the
Mm-hmm.
rules. Like, okay, we are in a dangerous situation. One of us might get bit. So we just need to be open and honest with each other and just have regular bite checks. And then it would have just solved this whole problem. I don't
Oh.
understand why we're not doing this. It's only
Mm.
logical. Joel has rules. Why isn't that a rule? But it's fine. Yeah, after the
Yeah.
brawl and they're all back at the motel room and they're all bonding and it's this really sweet tender moment. I'm like, they aren't coming with you. They're both going to die in the next 10
Mm.
minutes. What are we doing here?
Yeah.
Cuz this is The Last of Us and everybody dies.
You know, it's so funny because the episode ended and I am just feeling every feel possible. And, you know, I'm thinking back and I'm like, duh, one of them got bit. Like, we literally had a dedicated shot in the action sequence of them getting bit on their legs as they're getting dragged out from under the truck. So, like, I was like, Jen, you really should have seen this coming. But there's just so many other things happening. And I was just following along, feeling so excited that Joel invited them on the journey. You know, it's such growth for him to have that amount of trust to bring these two new variables into his little traveling crew. And I was distracted.
It's one of those reminders of how differently
Yeah.
you watch things, because you watch things and you're in the
Yeah.
emotion and you're feeling all of the things, and I am watching it as a like outside
Yes.
observer and have very little emotional attachment to what's going
Yep.
on.
Yep.
Because I watch things incorrectly. I get it. I know that I'm
So
doing it wrong.
funny.
But so I had a great time just
Guessing.
seeing what was happening and being like, "Oh my gosh, I see what you guys are doing. I know what this is."
Yeah.
Okay.
It's terrible. They can't do this to us, you know? Like, I think what's so tricky too is that, like, we have seen Joel and Ellie traveling on this journey, just the two of them, for a while. And we also get to see the beginning for, you know, I would say like half of this episode, how much Henry and Sam have also just like been alone and had to fend for themselves. And to the idea of them getting to do this together was just like, I was intoxicated by it. I got shamwowed by the show so successfully. I was like, regardless of logic, I just want them to be together. And there's such a clear
Mm-hmm.
trust and emotional connection that's forming, not just between Sam and Ellie, but also between Joel and Henry as well, because they've both done some stuff in their past, you know, and carrying the weight of that, the guilt from that, but also this like twisted sense of morality of finding how to justify that is something that you see them two also bonding over, of like, we've had to make some tough trade-offs to protect those that we love, even compromising some of our morals, but out of survival we've had to do it, and it still haunts us. And so I loved seeing that bond forming between them two, of them understanding each other. I got wooed in.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's
Yeah.
so good. It's I really appreciate how this is structured too. You know, we know some of the mistrust that Joel has, you know, and he's been alone for so long and he's haunted by the people that he couldn't save and all of this, and you see how he doesn't trust Henry at all at first. And I love the way that those scenes are written in the beginning, and how they're feeling each other out, and they don't trust each other, but they have to trust each other, and then to see them over the course of an episode get to this point where they want to continue on the journey together. And and they experience that sense of belonging that they haven't been able to have because they've just been in survival mode, and they found somebody that they can actually like connect with, even though, I mean, probably in a non-dystopian world they probably would never be friends, but here in this universe they can have that bond. And to do that in an hour-ish from a writing perspective is quite impressive. So like you were saying, the efficiency of the storytelling to get us rooting for these characters and just invested in their stories and wanting to see them survive and get to a better life for them and those that they care about. You know, like we can't help but root for them, but the show's really mean. And so then they just build that up and then just take it away.
Yes, the show is so mean. I agree. I like that. But yeah, I was reading a couple of comments about this episode and reviews, and some folks are saying like it feels a little bit bloated at the beginning of the episode. And I completely disagree. I think that all of that is necessary for the emotional development and foundation laying so that the big moments at the end of the episode really feel weighty. I think that if they had cut a lot of that out or cut that down a lot and made it more lean, we wouldn't have as much of the feeling of build up and relationship building that is needed in order to make that ending feel really big and explosive. And so, a lot of the big action honestly only happens in the last like 10 minutes of the episode. There's the big hordes of infected and the big attack that happens, and then some big emotional moments that happen in the last 3 minutes of the episode. But I think all of that is effective because we had 50 minutes beforehand of coming up with a plan, doing the dance of like, do we trust each other or not? Having to like sit in an abandoned classroom and just wait it out and have conversations. Like, I think all of that is so necessary. And so I don't think it's too bloated. I think it's just right in order to set up the big ending.
Yeah, no, I agree, because I think the show has a good understanding of human nature. And we talked about this, I think, in the previous episode too, of you don't trust somebody right away. You know, I've never survived the apocalypse, but I would imagine in that situation, it would be even harder to trust somebody that you just met, especially when you meet them and they're holding a gun to your head. Like, this is not the best foundation for a friendship. And so it takes time to develop that bond and to go from, okay, you're just a means to an end, to, hey, wait, I think you might be a good person to have around, you know? So that takes time. And I agree with you. I think it's a good investment, because we also learned so much about Joel and Ellie in that process too. And we've seen Joel so closed off, and little by little he's opening up more and more. And same thing with Ellie. You know, we've seen her having to be this really, really adult person. And this is another one of those episodes where we're reminded that she's still a kid. And it was just so fun to see those scenes of her and Sam playing together, and the way that they are able to connect with one another. And we haven't been able to see that before because we haven't seen any other kids in this show. So I think all of those moments were really important. And intercut in all of that, you also see more of Kathleen too. And so I think this is a really impressive episode to me, because all of these characters, Joel, Ellie, Kathleen, Henry, Sam, all of them, they are all three-dimensional, and they all have rich backstories. And we don't know all the details of all the things, but there's so much history there, whether it's explicitly stated or implied. And a lot of that work is done in this episode. And I think it's just a testament to, like we've talked about, how efficient this storytelling is, to get us to understand all of these people in such a short amount of time, in addition to all of the action scenes that also happen in this episode.
And one of the things that I really love about this episode and the way that it's structured, like you were mentioning, is how much the show is sympathetic to both sides. Granted, maybe it's a little bit more sympathetic to Henry and Sam's side and a little bit more judgmental of Kathleen's methods, but the show allows for that space for Kathleen to have the that really emotional moment in her childhood bedroom to share her wounds too, you know, and that being the root for a lot of the vengeance plot that she has now. It's because she's been hurt so deeply and has lost so much as well. And so it's easy to see, you know, Henry and Sam and Joel and Ellie as the heroes and Kathleen as the villain, but I think they all have a lot more in common. And Henry and Joel aren't the heroes either. They've had to do some shady things in order to protect those that they love, but they have made those trade-offs and deemed it worth it in order to protect their most beloved at the cost of innocent human lives or betraying those that you like absolutely adore and admire and respect, you know? And so all of these people have lost something and are fighting for something, you know? And so I love the way that the show almost draws more comparisons between Kathleen and the four protagonists that we're following instead of painting her to be just this cold-hearted individual. Like, yes, her methods are very flawed, but there's an understanding there that I think humanizes her and instead of villainizes her.
Yeah, no, she's awful, terrible, not okay to be doing what she's doing. But it is really interesting to see those conversations that she has with Perry, is that
Yep.
his name? And how he is like, no, we're all in. We're in it with you. You know, you have built this. You have done all of these things. So there's almost this implication of she's done all of these terrible things, and maybe she's built some things too, and maybe she's changed some things to make their lives, I don't know, maybe slightly better. I mean, I would argue now that this horde has broken through, things probably aren't so great if there's anybody left in Kansas City. But I appreciate that she's not just a black and white villain, but there are layers to her, there's complexity to her. What she's doing is not okay, but you can also see the tragedy and the grief and how she has taken that grief and twisted it and channeled it into this really unhealthy and destructive way. And it's just it's the same thing that all of our characters are grappling with, you know? Like what lengths will you go to survive, and how far will you go to protect the ones that you love? And that's kind of what we're seeing, how all of these different people are responding to that reality that they're facing every single day.
Yeah. She's channeled her grief into rage. Joel is just suppressing all of his grief. You know, like they
Yep.
are all finding ways to cope because the grief is insurmountable. It's too big to even begin to figure out how to process. So it's coming out in all of these different ways for these characters. One of the moments that I thought was really really affecting and really powerful is the conversation between Ellie and Sam before they go to bed. I loved that sequence because the way that children are able to like wear their heart on their sleeve and to articulate fundamental hard truths but are just like so much more easily accessible for them was really beautiful to see. I feel like we've seen so many adults and grown humans trying to navigate this, and there's so much that is suppressed. And we've seen, you know, Henry and Joel communicating, and it looks so different from the conversation between Ellie and Sam. So just the natural and ease of vulnerability that children have with each other and that Ellie and Sam have with each other, I thought was so beautiful to see them expressing these like root fundamental fears that they have and being unafraid to ask these like tough questions. Just really beautiful moment.
Mm-hmm. And I love that in this episode we see more vulnerability from Ellie. You know, I feel like in the previous episode we started to see her start to lower that wall when Joel apologized to her. And then I feel like in this episode she is almost able to go first. And you know, obviously Sam asks the question of like, are you not scared? And she is able to confess that she is scared. And then she jokes about it, of course, because humor is a great defense mechanism. But then she is finally safe enough to say, no, I'm scared of ending up alone. And I think that that's such a powerful statement. It's so succinct too. But and we don't know all of her backstory, but we know that she's an orphan. You know, we know even in this short journey with Joel that he's the only one that has been able to survive and keep going with her. And she bonded with Tess, and then Tess died, and she never got to meet Bill and Frank because they died. And now she bonded with Sam. And after she tried to save him, he died. And so it is this, it's so refreshing to see that vulnerability, but then also from, I think, a storytelling perspective that's so powerful because we understand that she's so scared, and the very thing that she's scared of is what she keeps enduring over and over and over again. And I'm very curious to see how the show is going to deal with that. Is there going to be a point where Joel will have to leave her and she will have to be alone? You know, I'm curious what that phrase is potentially setting up for the end of the season, because that is her core fear that is motivating her. And so how is the show going to put her in situations that are going to really like tug on that fear?
Mm-hmm. That's so good. That's so good. And it's interesting because Joel's big fear is like carrying the weight of those he can't save, you know? And
Mm.
fundamentally that's naturally, you know, going to push him to avoid building connection, avoid building emotional investment so that he doesn't have to carry yet another person that is going to haunt him and being unable to save. And it was cool because Joel and Henry talk about that. You know, they look over and the two kids are like giggling together in the corner, and they both say something along the lines of like the one thing kids have it maybe a little bit easier on is like they don't have someone relying on them. And so and Joel is somebody that like sees the the importance of that responsibility so seriously too. And so inherently that, and when he's operating in his unhealthy state, might push him away, and that touches on the exact fear that Ellie has. So recipes for some character tension, clashing, some spicy stuff.
And I think it also, if they are both emotionally healthy enough to lean into vulnerability, it could also be a bonding moment for Ellie and Joel, because now they both have tried to save someone and failed. And you know, that's something that is just driving Joel, and this need to protect and save and all of that. And you can see in this episode, Ellie, I mean, homegirl just is superhero. Like she's just flying through all these infected, like she goes above and beyond to save these two. And then she even goes beyond that to try and save Sam with her blood, and she couldn't. And so now they both have had this experience of trying their hardest, doing everything that they can to save this person, and it wasn't enough. And so I'm very curious now that they both have that very specific wound. Is that going to be something that causes them to bond further, or will that repel them apart?
Yeah, I loved seeing Ellie do her thing in that infected being attack because her natural instinct was to go and save these two new humans that she literally just met that day. But the depths of that like emotional connection between them as human beings, like she just, natural instinct was to go and put her own life at risk to go and try and save them from being killed. And I just thought that that was really notable for how Ellie is wired to and how much that connection that she had with her two new friends was enough, more than enough for her to go and do her thing, in the midst of an infected being attack. Talk about really seeing people's true colors. You don't have time to think and ponder and weigh the different options. No, you just, whatever comes to your mind first is what's gonna come, and hers is to be a protector as well.
Yeah, and I love that unspoken thing that happened between her and Joel too. He can be the sniper to help her get through the crowd. And I love the way that that's shot too, because you keep, you'd get a close up of his face, and then you'd get a close up of her face, and then you get a close up of his face. And so we're just going back and forth, and they have that same desire, and that same thing that is propelling them forward is to protect and save. And they didn't even need to talk about it. Obviously, like, they couldn't because they're very far away from each other, but they did what they needed to do. And Joel just did what he could do. And I appreciate that they're both kind of operating in their strengths in that moment, because obviously, like, Joel knows his way around a gun, he knows what he's doing, and then Ellie can't get infected, and so she is the perfect person to try and save these two. And I loved seeing that teamwork, and the way that this is edited together, I think, really emphasizes that bond between these two, that they're able to work together without ever communicating about it, because they're both driven by the same goal. And Joel immediately understands what Ellie is doing with just like a look that she gives, or she turns her head and he knows, okay, she's doing this, and can help lead the way. Like, that was just such a cool, it looks awesome, but then also from a character perspective, it was really fun to see.
Yes. It looks so good. It's also just well edited and well shot too. I love the intercutting back to Joel. I thought that was great, especially his like from his POV, and you just have to see Ellie in her little body running through this like horde of infected beings, and him having to have the precision to take out the infected being that's like literally about to kill her, but also to not kill Ellie. You know what I mean? And the challenge in that I thought was portrayed really well. And it there's these moments in the show where I'm watching and I'm like, oh yeah, this was a video game, and that sequence felt so video game-esque, and I'm sure would have felt really satisfying for perhaps those that are video game lovers, of like that seeing all of those infected beings like emerge from the ground was pretty exciting and pretty thrilling. And we're like, all right, let's go. Time to fight.
And I love it when zombies are fast zombies. That is so thrilling. Like, slow zombies can be exciting and dangerous, and there can be tension and stakes, and there's a way to do that. But fast zombies, terrifying. Oh my gosh. And so I was so pleased when the ground just opens up and they all just rush out, and they're going a million miles an hour, just starting to eat people. I was like, oh yeah, this is the zombie content that I was ready for. I know they're infected, I know they're not zombies, but this is what I've been waiting for. I'm so pleased.
I love the perfectly timed zombie that takes Kathleen out. That was really satisfying. Really great. Thank you for your service, my dude.
Well, and I love that Kathleen had a chance to get away. She could have run.
Mm,
She could have
yeah.
escaped. But it was her vengeance that was
That's
her undoing.
I
And
love
the
that.
fact
Yeah.
that she was choosing revenge, she was choosing violence, then meant that violence was returned upon her. And it's such a poetic ending because she didn't have to die that way. But because she was so fixated on her white whale that, well, you got eaten by an infected person.
Mhm.
Whoops.
Mhm. Yep. Yep. Especially because she says earlier something along the lines of like, this is like fate. It is what it is, like you can't deny fate when she's talking to Henry about Sam. So it kind of feels poetically fitting that you're right. She chooses violence and violence chooses her as well.
Mm-hmm. Let Kathleen be a
Mm,
cautionary tale.
mhm.
Like, maybe let's not choose vengeance and make that our whole
Yeah.
personality.
Yeah.
I don't know. Let's do something else, maybe.
She is such a fascinating villain because just the way that she communicates with her victims and with her team is just it's so it's fascinating to see on screen this woman with this almost like fake friendly demeanor, but then she'll literally just order you to be killed the moment after. It's just like a fascinating pairing. It reminds me a little bit of the Joker, of this almost like relishing in being fake nice, truly the definition of fake nice, and then taking you out the minute that she can.
Well, and I love the casting of Melanie Linsky in that
Mm.
role. I haven't seen her in a ton of things, but what I have seen her in, she's usually like meek and very
Oh.
kind and very sweet, and like it's this whole different demeanor. So to see her in this role where she is ruthless and she is manipulative and she's just, I don't know, like leading these guys down this path of destruction, I thought was just such a fascinating casting choice. It's brilliant. She does a great job in this, but I think it was so counter to how I'm used to seeing her in things that it made it even more fun to watch.
Yeah, it's like seeing Adam Brody as one of the sleazy dudes in Promising Young Woman. Like he's plays the nice
Yeah.
guy. And so it's such a head fake. But yeah, I loved seeing that. Okay. Other big things that we wanted to mention in this episode before we give out some awards.
Can I just say, I am so pleased that they have Sam as a
Mm-hmm.
deaf character. They cast a deaf
Yeah.
actor. I was reading a little bit about how the other actors they learned sign language, and somebody came in to teach the cast and crew sign language so that they could communicate with this actor. And I love how we're seeing this more and more frequently of deaf actors and actresses are getting these more prominent roles, and we're seeing sign language on TV, signed by people who have actually learned the language. We're seeing less and less of hearing people playing deaf roles. And I love that because deaf people do exist in the world. They do live, full lives. They contribute so much to our world. And so it's just wonderful to see that here, and to see, this brother relationship, and how they communicate with one another, and how, they love one another, and they champion one another. And so it was so much fun to see Sam, and how the show doesn't make him into an other. It's not like his deafness is something to be overcome, but it's just part of who he is. And it's fun to see Ellie like writing back and forth with him, and Sam teaching her some signs and even correcting her when she signs some things wrong. Like I loved seeing all of that. So props to The Last of Us for doing it right, and I would like to see more of that.
Mm-hmm. It's so interesting too because the show has a little moment where Henry and Sam are walking through. I believe they're in the building that they discover Joel and Ellie are in. And Sam steps on a few shards of glass and they have to sign towards each other to say, like, he says, like, oh, sorry, was that noisy? And like, yes, that was noisy. So like, we need to be more careful. So if anything, the fact that these two have figured out how to survive in this apocalyptic world where like sound and movement that tips people off to where your location is vital to life or death is even more impressive at the way that these two have worked together. So I think that was really neat to see the way that they support each other and communicated in these moments to ensure their survival.
And I love that it's Sam who's deaf too, because I mean, when you think about kids, kids are noisy. Like, whether they are hearing or deaf, they are noisy because they're children. And so it's also interesting to think about the ways that Henry has had to really help Sam with understanding how to be quiet even when Sam can't hear that. So changing maybe how he walks so that he's not stomping because he can't hear that he's stomping. You know, like little things like that. So it's just fun to kind of imagine how their life must have been so different. You know, it's one thing for Ellie and Joel to be navigating this world. It's very different for Henry and Sam to be navigating this and the challenges that they must have faced to get to this point.
Which makes their survival just even more impressive at their resilience and their creativity. You know, I loved his little clipboard contraption that I'm sure Henry made for him to be able to communicate with others as well, and finding all of the materials needed for it and to make it happen. It's just, it's impressive.
Oh, it was so cool. I loved it.
The show is so mean.
Yeah.
Making us fall in love with people, taking them away. Now, whenever there's a character that I'm like, you are very endearing, and that is very dangerous for me. We can't be getting invested in you. No, ma'am.
Nope. Nope. We want Joel to, you know, grow emotionally. We are not going to grow emotionally. I am over here. I am locked down. I am not letting anybody in the show into my heart because everybody's going to die.
Exactly. Precisely. I don't trust you. I don't trust you, show. We haven't been able to stay with a character we've loved that's not our two protagonists for more than like 2 episodes max so far. Granted, we're only at episode 5, but still, they didn't even get a full 2 episodes.
Nope. I mean, it was the same thing with Tess too. You know, we saw her for, you know, the tail end of episode 1 and for, I don't know, 3/4 of episode 2.
Everyone's dying faster than I'm prepared for.
Yep. So just buckle up. Get ready for some more dying.
Yep, because it's the apocalypse.
Yes. And everybody dies.
Apparently. Except for our plot armored up 2 protagonists.
I mean, it is helpful when the whole purpose of the character is that they can't get infected. So that is...
They can die, though.
That's helpful.
That's the fun thing.
Yes,
that was the really fun thing that I also think was great about this episode is that all of the things that Tess told Ellie in episode 2, I was thinking about in the infected being attack because the stakes are there. You know, like we know that she's immune, but she's not immune to like an infected being ripping her head off. You know what I'm saying? She doesn't have like regeneration healing properties to like regenerate her entire body all over again. So I think that was really great to add to the stakes and kind of the rules of what Ellie's superpowers may be and where the limits of those are.
Yeah, she is not invincible.
Yep. Okay, let's give out some TBNS awards. The first category is for Scrappiest Survivor. What is your choice?
I want to give it to our girl Ellie for saving Henry and Sam.
Yes. Oh, I loved it. It was so satisfying to see. She did her thing.
She sure did.
My choice for Scrappiest Survivor is to Perry for feeding Kathleen some real twisted ideology BS so that he doesn't get shot by her. It's really useful for him.
Yeah. That's a real good point. There was that moment where I was like, oh my gosh, is she going to take this dude out this instant? And nope, he got her.
Yep. She just needs some like words of affirmation, some validation to justify her actions. That's all she needed. And he fed it to her.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
He did.
Okay, the next category is for grittiest moment.
I want to give this to Kathleen telling Perry to burn the bodies.
Yeah. So rough. She is,
I don't know,
and she says it
man.
so casually.
Ugh.
You know, it's as if she's like, "Oh my gosh, it's cold today. Yeah, just burn the bodies."
Gosh, and I don't know, man, but this might just be me. But during that whole scene, I just kept thinking of the Zone of Interest.
Oh, yeah.
And I was just making some Nazi parallels there. I don't know if that's what the show was going for, but that's where my brain went.
Yeah.
And that made that burn the bodies comment even more terrifying. It's like, oh no, this chick has to go. This is not okay. Yep. Yeah, that was terrifying.
Yeah. She's scared. She is a great villain, honestly. Maniacal in the best way. Yes. She's got some flair and showmanship to her too. She kind of loves to indulge in that a little too much, you know, with her little monologues. Great villain.
A good monologue, man. That'll just take you out. Like, it's just part of the villain rule, is you give a monologue and then you're gone. Just is what it is.
My choice for this category is Ellie knifing the two infected beings. The dopamine, I swear, just flooded in my brain as that happened. I'm like, you go. She is fearless. My goodness.
Yeah.
Real great.
Yep.
Love that girl. Okay. The next category is Straight Shooter Award. What is your choice for this one?
I want to give it to Joel when he says to Henry, "You ate. We didn't kill each other. Let's call it a win-win and move on."
Nice. There's some really great candidates in this one. I feel like we got so many good options. That was a great one.
It was hard to choose.
Very hard to choose. I'm going to choose a Kathleen moment where she says to the group of ex-Fedra that are in the cell, "You're informers. Inform."
Yes. That was another one of my options.
I love the clarity and communication. Right. There's some really good ones. Another one that I just was really like sweet to see, because we don't know much about this character yet, is when Henry says to Joel, "Okay, when he holds them at gunpoint, okay, I don't really know what the next step is with something like this." Yeah. Like, my dude, at least pretend. It's great.
Oh, so good. It's so reminiscent of Frank when we first meet him in episode 3. And he's like, I can't lie.
Yeah. He's like, "I thought about lying for some reason, but the reason never came."
It's that similar vibe that those two share. So it's just like automatically endearing.
Yes, exactly. And automatically trust inducing, you know? You're like, okay, we love the clarity and the vulnerability that you're showing, that you have no idea what you're doing.
And I love that the episode 4 ends with Henry, holding Ellie at gunpoint. And then we see early in episode 5, the old dude mentions that they're out of bullets, and Henry says that he's also out of bullets. And so we instantly know that Henry was never going to shoot them because the gun wasn't loaded. And so then that instantly reframes everything that we thought we knew about him and colors all of those conversations. So then when he says something like that, where he just doesn't know what to do next, it makes sense, because this is not normally how he operates. He's done something else to survive. And so I loved those little details to help us know who Henry is.
I love when he says to Joel later, he's like, "Holding you at gunpoint was the most violent thing I've ever done in my life."
Yes.
Oh, it's great. Yeah. But it's why it's so perfect, because you see how much they really do need each other, Joel and Henry. They are such perfect complements to what they need for this plan. So it's satisfying to see them be successful in that. All right. Well, this was our review and discussion of episode 5. You can find it available on Max. Thank you for listening to today's episode of TV and Us. Our name sums it up. We're big fans of TV and the powerful ways we can connect with each other and the world around us. This podcast is about all of us and our shared stories. So everyone is welcome here, and we're so glad you spent time with us today as we continued our journey through The Last of Us Season 1. You can subscribe to this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you tune to your favorite shows. Drop us a rating and review, letting us know your thoughts about Episode 5. You can connect with us on Instagram, Threads, and TikTok at tvnspod, or email us at tvnspod@gmail.com. We will be back very soon to discuss Episode 6, Marching On Forward. We hope you have an amazing week, and we'll talk again with y'all very soon.